Happy Friday! It's almost the weekend, and I think we earned one, did we not? This is Wake Up Wenatchee Valley. It's the 8th day of January 2021, and I'm Dan Koontz. And we got some good news right out of the box. We can use the cross camera this morning. This is the time of the year when we get the fog and the clouds, and the camera that you see behind me is usually, well, it's working, but you can't see anything, so there's no point in throwing it up on the screen, but we can see the valley this morning. Pretty quiet next couple of days, but I need to tell you right now, listening to the scanner throughout the course of the last couple of hours, there are some slick spots out there. We'll talk about that. Also some light, a couple of rocks coming down on 97A, that area near the Knapsail Tunnel and near Earthquake Point between Aniat and the Knapsail Tunnel is susceptible to those kinds of things. You get rain, and then the rain, the water seeps inside the rocks, and then it freezes, and then it expands, and the rocks, you know how all that works. And a few people spinning out, nothing real serious. But all in all, pretty quiet weekend coming our way before we get very warm and very mild for most of next week. Forecast details are coming up. There's a lot of news to get to, as you might imagine. It's been a busy news week around the bullpen. We got headlines coming your way. Sports, Eric had a chance to sit down and talk with three local athletic directors. Jim Beeson, the athletic director of the Wenatchee School District, Russ Waterman, the athletic director for the Eastmont School District, and Jeff Carlson, the athletic director for the Cashmere School District, about rolling out high school sports coming next month. That'll come your way in sports, and we'll preview the Seahawks and the Rams, who will do battle in Seattle tomorrow afternoon. The obscure holiday today in history, some celebrity birthdays. Everyone's entitled to Might Be Naughty's opinion. And after a 2-week break, Dr. Malcolm Butler returns this morning. Dr. Malcolm Butler, of course, is a physician with Columbia Valley Community Health. He's also the health officer for the Chelan Douglas Health District, and he does his weekly updates called Better Together. He didn't do one for the last couple of weeks. First of all, the Christmas holiday, then the New Year holiday, but he's back with very important local COVID information. We'll have that for you in the back half of the hour. All right, let's see what we got. It's kind of misty, a little foggy in some locations, 33 degrees. There is the Wenatchee Valley proper. We're a ways from sunrise. Sunrise 7:47, sunset 4:29. That's 8 hours and 42 minutes of daylight. And we had very little temperature variation yesterday. The clouds and the fog kind of just hung around. Our high on Thursday was 35. Our low was 31, which was a little below our forecast high. So it was a little above normal, but not that much above normal. But we're going to have fairly mild conditions for January coming up this weekend. Good morning, Wenatchee Valley from the Cross Camp. Okay, let's see where we're going. It's always that's Valley High, I believe, Megan. Hello, Valley High. How are you? Those cars, those headlights that you see down there are automobiles on their way up Blewett Pass. From our Valley High camera, there are a number of people who use that Sky-Fi tower site to get super fast, high-speed internet in remote locations. That's what the whole Sky-Fi thing is all about. Right now, traction tires, by the way, are advised on Blewett. It's snowing lightly, as you can see there. Camera number 3. Ooh, that's pretty. That's pretty. That is McNeil Canyon. Yay, the very top of McNeil Canyon. You go all the way to the top, and then you put a camera on a tower that's about 200 feet up in the air, and that's what you get to see. Lake Chelan way off in the distance. The Chelan Butte is to your left. You can kind of make out the lights of Chelan proper. The airport is off to your right there. Way off in the distance is the North Cascades, a spectacular view there from that camera. And because Megan has it pulled way back, it's letting in as much light as it possibly can. So it looks lighter on television right now that you see than it actually is, but that's how it works. Camera number 4. Ooh, it's one of two things, either Badger or Monument. It's Badger Mountain. Good for me, Dan. So the big black spot that you see down below there are the wheat fields between East Wenatchee and the top of Badger Mountain on your way up to Waterville, and the lights are the lights of Wenatchee. Can't quite make out the lights of East Wenatchee. The East Wenatchee bench kind of blocks them from view. Good view, good stuff this morning from my producer, 3M. 5 minutes after the hour, slick roads, I talked about it. We've had some reports of some spinouts. It's right at that freezing mark. It's been hovering right around 31 to 32 degrees most of the morning, and we did have some freezing fog overnight, and we had some light rain and some light mist And it is freezing in some locations, not so much here on the valley floor, but in other locations that are more susceptible to having ice form on the roadway. We've had some slippery conditions in a few locations. If you don't have to go anywhere for a while, it's probably not a bad idea to put off your morning commute, if in fact you can. Next week, as I mentioned before, we're in for some very warm and very wet weather. There's an atmospheric river. It's lined up, and it's going to bring us quite a bit of rain in the lower elevations and some snow in the upper elevations. The snow level is going to go way up. It's going to be maybe 5,000 feet as some warm, moist air comes in from the southwest. That is next week. It's going to be very active for the most part as we get deeper and deeper into January after what's probably going to be a fairly quiet weekend this weekend from Mother Nature's perspective. From the National Weather Service, here we go. Take a look. Cloudy today, rain, snow. Rain, snow mix off and on throughout the course of the day today. It's about a 70% chance of something coming down out of the sky. A lot of it depends on where you live. Your snow level will be at 2,200 feet. So below 2,200 feet, a little bit of a rain, snow mix, and then just plain rain below even that. 2,200 feet and above, you could get some light snow. Nothing big. If we get any snow at all, it ain't going to last very long. But it's going to be kind of a cloudy, gray, somewhat wet day and a high of about 36 degrees. Patchy fog forms tonight, 29 for the overnight low. You're going to wake up with a little bit of sunshine Saturday, but it's not going to last as long as they were hoping. A couple of days ago, they were thinking quite a bit of sunshine on Saturday. Now they're thinking maybe not so much. By the time we get to noon on Saturday, it'll be fairly cloudy. No precipitation in the forecast, high of 37, 30 for the overnight low Saturday night as the patchy fog reforms. The snow level is going to go down to 900 feet Saturday night, but there's no moisture in the air, near as we can tell. Sunday, cloudy, gray, foggy, 38 for the afternoon high. Monday, we repeat Sunday all over again. So that 48-hour period on Sunday and Monday, it's pretty much the same deal. And then here comes the active weather. It'll start really on Monday night as we start seeing the rain roll in. Snow level Monday night will be at 2,600 feet. And then we have basically a 50% chance of rain on Tuesday night, Wednesday night. Snow level is going to be sky high. It's going to be up near maybe 5,000 feet, so we're not looking at any kind of snow for the north central Washington area. Whatever precipitation we get Tuesday and Wednesday will almost certainly be in the form of rain. Okay, to the passes we go. Pretty quiet. Not a lot to concern yourself with right now. It's a live shot of I-90. No advisories, no restrictions. It's cloudy, nothing coming down out of the sky. The roadway is pretty much bare and wet. Let's take you to Stevens. Traction tires are advised. Light snow coming down. I see quite a bit of asphalt, so Stevens doesn't look too bad at all. You'll find some pockets of snow and slush here and there. And again, traction tires are advised. It's 31 degrees at the summit of Stevens. That's what it is down here in the Wenatchee Valley. It's 30 degrees at the summit of Blewett, as you could saw earlier with our Valley High camera. It's snowing lightly. Traction tires are advised. You'll find a little bit of snow and ice on the roadway right at the very summit of Blewett Pass. So traction tires advised on Blewett, advised on Stevens. No advisories or restrictions on I-90. They're going to get 2 to 3 inches of snow today, and then no snow in the forecast for the mountain passes before snow returns on Monday night and Tuesday, but even then, not a lot of snow expected to come down in the Cascades. 8 minutes after the hour, I'm going to take a break and come back with your Friday morning news. You're watching Wake Up Wenatchee Valley on the NCW Life Channel.
CVCH wants to make your winter just a little brighter with their Get Out and Explore gift giveaway. This December and January, visit cvchgetout.com and download fun, safe, and simple activity guides to 4 beautiful towns in our backyard: Wenatchee, Chelan, Cashmere, and Leavenworth. Most activities are free of charge and unique to the community you visit. So get out and explore. Visit cvchgetout.com for details.
Mary Maids of Wenatchee has been professionally cleaning and sanitizing homes and businesses in north central Washington since 1998. Mary Maids uses commercial-grade cleaners and viricides. Mary Maids has implemented additional safety and sanitation protocols. They are strictly following CDC guidelines for the safety of their clients and employees. For expert help with cleaning and sanitizing your home or business, call or look up Mary Maids of Wenatchee to schedule your free estimate today.
We have cloudy, a little foggy, a little misty. We're at about 33 degrees, rain-snow mix and then probably just plain rain later on this afternoon. We're in for a pretty quiet weekend, and then things get warm and wet for next week. And at 10 minutes after the hour, here are your headlines. Governor Jay Inslee and every Democrat in Washington's congressional delegation say they support the removal of President Trump from office. As you all know by now, and as you see there, the mob seeking to overturn the 2020 election and return Trump to the presidency storming the nation's capital on Wednesday. In Olympia, protesters broke a gate and trespassed on the grounds of the governor's mansion. There has been growing calls to remove the president by either impeachment or by invoking the 25th Amendment to the Constitution.
It was not a protest, it was an insurrection. And we need to go to the heart of that insurrection and remove that cancer. And that means the President of the United States, who has continually fueled this insurrection with his outright deceptions, his deceit, and his continued lies. And it is very clear where the fuel for this has been. It has been the President of the United States who has continued to try to convince every chance he gets that this election was stolen, when in fact it was won. This election was won by Joseph Biden and lost by Donald Trump. And the violence that we saw yesterday, it had a clear cause, and that was the deception of Donald Trump. And I do not believe the United States can abide that clear and present danger even for another 13 days. He needs to step down. He needs to be removed, if that's through the 25th Amendment or impeachment. But by any legal means necessary, we cannot abide the current risk to the security and the freedoms and the democratic traditions of the United States. And I would commend those members of the U.S. Congress who are trying to move in that direction.
The 9 federal representatives who have endorsed removing Trump from office include 8th District Congresswoman Kim Schreier and both Washington State Senators Patty Murray and Maria Cantwell. The man arrested for robbing the BJ's Shell station in Rock Island back in November is now accused in an earlier armed robbery at a grocery store in Royal City. The Royal City Police Department says 25-year-old Jesus Torres entered the grocery store on November 6th, pointed a pistol at employees, demanded money. He fled by the time police arrived. Back on November 17th, Torres is accused of robbing 2 Moses Lake businesses just after midnight, then leading pursuing officers on a chase that ended up in Ephrata, shooting at a Grant County deputy as he drove. Deputy Jeff Wentworth was struck by a bullet fragment. He has since returned to duty. And the Douglas County Sheriff's Office says later that same day, Torres showed up at BJ's in Rock Island, where he is accused of threatening a clerk and a customer with a handgun before he made off with cash and a jug of antifreeze. The 2 men accused in the December 23rd murder in a Wenatchee apartment formally arraigned on Wednesday. Shane Earl Hagan and Brendan Ripper are charged with second-degree murder, second-degree assault, and witness intimidation in the shooting death of 36-year-old Jesus Manuel Garcia of Toppenish. Garcia died by gunfire at an apartment in the 600 block of Idaho Street. Both men face trial in February if jury trials have resumed by then, of course, because of the pandemic. They remain in jail, held on a $1 million bail. The weekly measure of the Wenatchee Valley's COVID-19 situation continues to rise. There's your latest thermographic from the Chelan Douglas Health District. The current infections per 100,000 members of the population reached 693.9 this week. That's up from New Year's week and the highest number since November. Health officials continue to stress the best ways to avoid being infected with COVID are social distancing, wearing a face mask if you must be out among others, and wash your hands a whole bunch. Wenatchee School Superintendent Dr. Paul Gordon said plans are well underway for returning all students to classrooms this month on a hybrid schedule. Earlier this week, I had a chance to visit with Dr. Gordon, and he says he's proud of how well his staff has prepared for students to return.
Where our K through 3 students have been with us for close to 2 months now, and things have gone exceptionally well. Really pleased. We know we're better when we're face-to-face with our kids, and our teachers continue to tell us that with our K-3 students. And as you said, our 4th graders are coming back next Monday, January 11th, and we're super excited to welcome them back. And then quickly followed on January 20th, we'll have our 5th graders. And then on January 26th, we'll have our largest grouping of students coming back, our secondary students, our middle and high school students, and our secondary principals, assistant principals, all the team members, front office staff have been working diligently to make sure that transition goes smoothly as well.
Have the teachers come back en masse, or are there still some teachers who might be a little leery in this COVID world of actually having close physical contact with some of the students?
You know, almost at every point in time as we're bringing students back, the anxiety level has increased. You know, our metaphor for it has been everybody's kind of getting up on that high dive board, and until you jump off, it's pretty nerve-wracking because this is still a worldwide pandemic, and there's still risks associated with it. But each group of teachers and staff members, because it's not just our teachers, it's our bus drivers, it's our front office staff, it's our custodians, our nutritional services teams. Yeah, there's anxiety there. What comforts me is for those who've already been back, they see all the protocols that we've put into place and that they're following those protocols with great proficiency. And I'm so proud of our staff and our students, how well our students are following our expectations.
Speaking of the Wenatchee School District, they need bus drivers, and they want applicants for bus drivers to get out there and get the job done, so to speak. Transportation Director Jennifer Lagodino says there's a shortage of drivers, plus an increase in routes as more students return to school this month, and that means, hey, there's a sense of urgency to recruit and train new bus drivers. Starting pay for a bus driver, $21.45 an hour. You can apply at the Wenatchee School District's website, at the Transportation Department, or you can give them a call at 662-6168. And that's what's making headlines at 17 minutes after the hour. It's been a busy week. Super kudos to all of our news gatherers and disseminators for hammering through another week of busy news. We'll have another newscast for you tonight at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 10 o'clock. With a preview, here is Grant Olson.
Good morning, Dan. Coming up tonight on the NCW Life Evening News, after this latest round of precipitation moves off to the east, we'll see quiet and mild weather for the upcoming weekend. I'll have the details in your North Central Washington weather forecast. And in sports, Eric Granstrom yesterday talked to local athletic directors about what the change in sports seasons will mean here locally. That and all the day's news coming up tonight at 5, 6, and 10 on the NCW Life Evening News. Hope to see you then. Dan?
Thanks, Grant. Very dapper, by the way. Grant looking good. You got a news tip, or you just want to drop us a note and say hi, or you got something on your mind? Get a hold of us. You can email us directly, news@ncwlife.com, news@ncwlife.com. You can go to our website, ncwlife.com. You want to bookmark that because we populate it on a regular basis with the latest news and weather and sports and things like that. There's also a Contact Us icon there. Or you can go to our Facebook page and use the Messenger app and say hello that way. Going to take a break. When we come back, sports, including Eric's conversation with Jim Beeson, Russ Waterman, and Jeff Carlson about rolling out high school sports. We'll have that. Plus the obscure holiday today in history, some celebrity birthdays, Mike McNulty's opinion, and the weekly Better Together segment with Dr. Malcolm Butler from the Chelan Douglas Health District. It's all coming up on a busy Friday. You're watching Wake Up Wenatchee Valley on the NCW Life channel.
Club Crow Bar and Grill in Cashmere is your place for famous blues, brews, and barbecue.
Currently, Club Crow Bar and Grill in Cashmere is open for takeout. Owner Justin Hefner and his staff are just as excited as you to get back to their regularly scheduled full menu, music, and poker, so stay tuned. Meanwhile, Club Crow Bar and Grill in Cashmere is serving a limited menu for lunch and dinner takeout.
Club Crow Bar and Grill in Cashmere, the coolest place in town.
Contractors, furniture makers, and weekend do-it-yourselfers around North Central Washington will tell you that Lombard's Hardwood Supply is the place to get what you need. Lombard's full millwork shop can handle jobs large or small. Lombard's has a full line of interior and exterior doors available, as well as custom barn doors. From alderwood to zebrawood and everything in between, it's Lombard's Hardwood Supply on School Street in Sunny Slope. Like us on Facebook and check out our monthly special.
We're back at 20 minutes after the hour. Sports. The WIAA Executive Board, of course, as you know by now, voted Wednesday night to restart high school sports in our state beginning February 1st. The decision was to reshuffle its original plan, and that was to start with traditional winter sports. Instead, they're going to go first with fall sports like football, and that may work for schools in Western Washington, but weather and restart phasing would prohibit such a plan here in Eastern Washington. Our very own sports director, Eric Granstrom, held a video conference with 3 local athletic directors to learn more about the plan and how it affects schools here in North Central Washington.
All right, well, it's a new year, and I don't know if it's any better than last year, but we're forging ahead. We've got the athletic directors for some local schools. Joining us here on the NCW Life Channel, we have from Cashmere, Jeff Carlson. From Eastmont, we have Russ Waterman, and from Wenatchee, we have Jim Beeson. I wanted to start with Jeff because Cashmere's been back to school for a while now, and with the announcement with the WIAA yesterday, changing things up and calling an audible of bringing fall sports into the picture and possibly starting in February. Jeff, I wanted to see where you guys are and what's happening at Cashmere right now and in the Caribou Trail Lake.
We're in a region with 4 other counties. So there's been a real emphasis today on trying to coordinate with those other leagues in our region and trying to find a way to get kids back on the field. And what that's going to look like, we're not too sure yet. We're still in preliminary conversations. But our goal this year is not to win trophies, not to win state championships. It's to get games on the schedule and play those games. I mean, that's what's most important to us. So any way that we can do that, that's how we're going to move forward. Maybe Russ and Jim could talk a little bit more about the conversations we've had, because we have talked with them a lot, and it might be a situation where we're playing bigger schools out of our classification that are closer to us in order to just get games, because I don't know how many competitions we're going to be able to have outside of our region. So things will probably look different once we do start playing, but we're totally fine with that as long as we're on the fields.
Yeah, of course, this conversation has had to include what's happening with the state of Washington and the restart phasing and such. And now with the governor coming out, and I know that's why the WIAA Executive Board vote was delayed so that they could take a look at the Healthy Washington initiative by the governor, creating 8 regions in our state. For the Caribou Trail League, well, you're all in the same region, so I don't imagine that has that big of an impact. But the Columbia Basin Big Nine is a different story. So, Russ, I'll start with you. As far as the Big Nine is concerned, where are we?
We discussed is the Big Nine, and to an AD in the league, it was, fellas, don't wait for us. If our region's not there, we're not going to hold us to a Big Nine schedule. So I think the consensus at this point, but there's got to be a lot more discussion and a lot more input and research on this, is to go to more of a regionalization format. It makes a lot of sense. The things that Jeff was saying, it makes a lot of sense in regards to COVID, in regards to putting kids on a bus, smaller distance for transportation. We're all on the same page. We're not going to build a schedule that's going to be canceled 2 days before a competition because the metrics went sideways. It just makes a lot of sense. But we've got a lot of conversation to do with a lot of different ADs, a lot of different district superintendents, and everybody else to make sure that we've got everything ready to go, and we've only got a very short amount of time to get that done.
Jim, let's bring you into this conversation. They pinpointed February 1st as a possible start. Of course, with the phasing, everybody's in phase 1 right now. It'd take phase 2 to get things back on their way, according to what I read yesterday. So for Wenatchee High School, for football, for example, does that mean practice starts on February 1st and there's possibly games 2 weeks later, or what's that look like?
Realistically, the ability to start on February 1st is not very good. I mean, obviously because we have a turf field and can remove the snow from our turf field, it benefits us, and we potentially could be ready to go by February 1st. But if you've been out to Leavenworth lately or up north in Okanagan area and those kinds of places, playing football on February 1st is not going to happen. And so that's part of our discussion, and that's what makes this so difficult is not only are we looking at the reality that the best thing is regionalizing things, but then we've got to realize we've got to take, I think the decision, the WIA executive board was made more because there's more schools in Western Washington and their ability to get outside on February 1st is much greater than ours. But they've also given us the leniency to be able to change and modify to what best fits us in our region. And that's what a lot of the conversations have been about. And obviously, we're just the Big Nine is three of the schools that are in our region. And obviously there's a lot more schools that we have got to take that into consideration, and we all got to work together and come up with a plan that isn't necessarily starting on February 1.
Russ, I thought that this was varsity only. So I'm wrong in that when we're talking about any kind of resumption of sports, or how?
Right now, the priority would be to, yes, have a varsity schedule, but we want to try and get as many of our kids back participating as possible and make this work. If that means that we're going to have, play multiple times with schools, if we have to play Moses Lake and Wenatchee multiple times with a JV team or a C or D team, then so be it, because it's about, again, that social mental health of these kids getting back with their friends and their coaches and doing something productive that's a positive in their life. As well as giving them that outlet, that physical outlet that a lot of them need. So we're trying to go with that. It's going to be different. There's nobody that believes it's going to be the same, and we're ready for that. But we're going to try and bring it as much as normal as possible with every level to compete.
You can see Eric's entire conversation, by the way. It'll be up and running on our website, about half hour or so. You can check it out yourself. Let's take a quick look at the Les Schwab scoreboard from college basketball last night. Corey Kispert had 23 points to lead number 1 Gonzaga to an easy win over BYU, 86-69. Isaac Bonton, 22 points to lead the Cougars past Cal, 71-60. Washington was no match for Stanford. They got creamed, 91-75. Here's the schedule coming up tomorrow. The Huskies will be at Cal. That's a noon tip-off. Gonzaga travels to Portland at 5 o'clock, and the Cougars will play at Stanford at 6:30. To the ladies we go. Washington and Washington State's games against the Arizona schools scheduled for today, postponed. COVID-19. Number 21 Gonzaga, the Lady Zags, will host Portland tomorrow at 2 o'clock. And on the schedule for Sunday, number 7 Arizona at Washington State at 11, followed by Arizona State and Washington at 1 o'clock. Of course, big game tomorrow. It's playoff time. They'll be doing battle at Lumen Field. Hawks hosting the Rams, NFC wildcard playoffs. 1:40 kickoff on Fox. The winner advances to the divisional round. In fact, here's your schedule for the whole weekend. It starts tomorrow morning, 10:05, Colts and Bills on CBS. Then after the Hawks and the Rams, you got Tampa Bay at Washington at 5:15 on NBC. Here's your Sunday lineup. You got Tennessee and Baltimore at 10:05 on ESPN. New Orleans hosting Chicago at 1:40 on CBS. And then Pittsburgh takes on Cleveland at 5:15 on CBS, or on NBC, I should say. Here's our schedule this weekend, sports-wise, here on the NCW Life Channel. We got State 1A girls basketball tonight. The semifinals from last year between Kashmir and LaSalle. That airs at 7. On Saturday, we got the Kashmir boys trophy game in Yakima against Riverview at 2 o'clock, followed by the state championship game between the Kashmir girls and Linden Christian at 7. Sunday, a double feature of Wenatchee Wild Hockey against the West Kelowna Warriors from October of 2019 at 2 o'clock, and then again at 7. And those are just some of the games that people are playing on this 8th day of January. Time to dust off the old rubber ducky and pop into the old bathtub. It's National Bubble Bath Day on January 8th. I cannot remember the last time I took a bubble bath. I can't remember the last time I took a bath, period. It's not like I don't have good personal hygiene. I pop into the shower and I call it good. I take a shower once a month, and that seems to get the job done. Bubble baths have been popular for as long as, well, bubble bath soap has been a thing. Very relaxing. By the way, bubbles act as an insulator, so it preserves the heat in the bath. So if you want to take a long hot bath and you put bubbles in it, the water stays hotter longer because it's like you have a blanket on top of the water. It's kind of cool. So, and in this day and age, who's kidding who? A nice bubble bath wouldn't be bad at all, especially in the dead of winter. So Yeah, bubble baths. I took tons of bubble baths when I was a kid. I can't remember the last time I took a bubble bath. Maybe, well, I can't fit in my bathtub. I'm too tall. Oh well. It's the bottom of the hour today in history. Article 2, Section 3 of the United States Constitution says, and I quote, "He shall from time to time give to Congress information of the state of the Union and recommend to their consideration such measures as he shall judge necessary and expedient." State of the Union address, the very first one ever, was delivered by George Washington on this date back in 1790. The very first State of the Union address was delivered by George Washington in New York City. Washington and his successor, John Adams, delivered it as a speech orally in front of a joint session of Congress. The third president, Thomas Jefferson, was a notoriously bad public speaker. He was a great writer. He just wasn't a good speaker, and he decided to write his State of the Union address, and every president since then did that until Woodrow Wilson brought back the tradition of actually speaking the State of the Union address. The last time the State of the Union address was in a written form is when Jimmy Carter delivered it in 1981, but he was already on his way out of office. Every member of Congress can bring one guest to the State of the Union address. The president can invite 24 guests. The Speaker of the House gets to invite 24 guests. Seating in the House chamber is first come, first serve, unless you're in the diplomatic corps, the cabinet, the Supreme Court, or the Joint Chiefs of Staff. They get reserved seating because they can. The very first State of the Union address was delivered 231 years ago today. Andrew Jackson made his name on this date, January 8th, 1815, 205 years ago, 206 years ago now, I guess. The War of 1812, the Battle of Nolens. Andrew Jackson leads American troops to victory over the British. Now, of course, the war was already over. The Treaty of Ghent was signed on December 24th of the previous year, but the people who fought in the Battle of Nolens didn't know about it, and they went ahead and fought anyway. Yes, the Battle of New Orleans took place 2 weeks after the conclusion of the War of 1812. These things happen. And finally, January 8th, 1835, 186 years ago today, the United States national debt, zero. For the only time we were completely out of debt, and starting the next day, we have begun the long American tradition of spending more money than we actually have. And as about an hour ago, our national debt, as about an hour ago, $27,563,695,761,860.61. That's the United States Treasury building, by the way, right there. So what you see is a picture of a building with nothing in it. Birthdays. The king of rock and roll, Elvis Aaron Presley, would have been 86 years old today, died at the age of 42 in 1977, one of the most significant cultural figures in world history during the 20th century, the king of rock and roll. What else do you say about Elvis? The music lives on. Elvis, born in the state in 1935. Stephen Hawking, the famous physicist and author who died a couple of years ago, was born in the state in 1942. He, of course, was responsible for the gravitational singularity theorem of general relativity and the theoretical prediction that black holes emit radiation. It's called the Hawking radiation. And I don't know what any of that means, except he was a super smart guy. He was born in the state in 1942. David Bowie, born in the state in 1947. He's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and on merit. We miss David Bowie. He's been gone now for 5 years. And Kim Jong-un, the supreme leader of North Korea, celebrates a birthday today. We think he's got 4 of them. When you're the supreme leader of North Korea, you can celebrate 4 of them. According to the North Koreans, he was born on January 8th, 1982. According to the South Koreans, he was born on January 8th, 1983. He went to school, boarding school in Switzerland, and according to them, he was born on July 5th, 1984, and the United States believes he was born on January 8th, 1984. Insert your own joke here. Going to take a break. Mike McNarty's got an opinion, and then it's the weekly Better Together segment with Dr. Malcolm Butler from the Chelan Douglas Health District. You're watching Wake Up Wenatchee Valley on the NCW Live channel.
When you call Dick's Heating and Air Conditioning, you get 35 years of experience and customer service in the Wenatchee Valley. Dick's friendly staff strongly believe in repairing before replacing and service all major brands of HVAC units. Dick's Heating and Air Conditioning is your local, independent, trained comfort specialists, proudly serving all of North Central Washington. Call 884-6444 today. Stay.
Hello, North Central Washington. I'm Dave Tosh, Executive Director, Wenatchee Valley Senior Activity Center, and I'm excited to announce a new variety show entitled Vibrant Living, brought to you by the Senior Center. And I think you'll find it educational, informative, and a lot of fun. Join us in early November for the new program, Vibrant Living.
Hey, this is Mike Mad Dog McNally, and everybody is entitled to my opinion. Now, I just read a Facebook post from somebody I like and admire, always have. But the poster recounted a totally disagreeable contact with a local politician of a certain party. This poster then posted, and I quote, "This is why I think people of that party are callous and insensitive. It's because their leadership at both local and national levels, they act callous and insensitive too." Now what is it when you categorize all members of a group by behavior of some of the members of the group? What is that called? What do we call that? And why is it okay to condemn prejudice in others but justify it in oneself? This is Mike Mad Dog Magnotti, and that's my opinion.
Hi, everybody. Dr. Malcolm Butler here. I am a family physician at Columbia Valley Community Health, and I am also the health officer for Chelan and Douglas counties. I appreciate you taking a few minutes with me today. I have some graphs and data to share with you first, and then a few questions that we're going to run through. So let's get started. Okay, so this first graphic is just showing the data we have as of yesterday. The important number is sort of this one in red down here. So the incidence in our two counties is 694, just about 700. And that's the number of cases we have seen per 100,000 population in the last 2 weeks. You'll see also that we currently have 32 people hospitalized with COVID. And throughout the pandemic, we're reporting 38 mortalities. I think this curve is probably more interesting. This is also showing us the incidence over the past 14 days. And what these red bars represent the holidays. So we're starting at October 1st and going through yesterday. So this red bar is Thanksgiving, this is Christmas, this is New Year's. And you can see that we surged and got up just above 1,000 in the early part of December. We started back down, and right now we're just above, or very close, I'm sorry, to 700. And you can see it looks like this curve is beginning to swing back up. And we actually anticipated that happening. We knew that following the holidays, when people were gathering together, we would see an increase. Honestly, we expected to see an increase after Thanksgiving, and we did not see one, which I think is a testament to all of us who made some hard decisions not to gather with friends and family over the holidays. So we are hopeful that we're not going to see very much of a surge, but I think we're going to continue seeing these numbers go up for the next week, and then hopefully they'll start back down. So this slide now is looking at the testing by week. The far left is all the way back in April. The far right is through the end of last week. And you can see that over the last 6 weeks, we've gradually done less and less testing overall. And this 15% here is the percent of the tests which turned positive. And so everybody's aware that the more people you test, the more positives you find. So it's actually that percentage of the total tests which we track. And the governor made an announcement a few days ago talking about when restaurants might be able to reopen and fitness centers and that sort of thing. And one of the indicators he is looking at is this test positivity rate. And that needs to be below 10% for us to move to the next phase of reopening. So right now we're at 15%. This graphic is looking at how many COVID people, and that's not a nice way of saying it, how many people suffering from COVID are in our hospitals right now. This middle graph is looking at the Okanagan County and Chelan County hospitals. Red are people with COVID. Yellow are people who we expect have COVID, but we're still waiting for their tests to come back. And what you can see is that we kind of peaked out back again in the early part of December, and these numbers have begun to come down. So that's reassuring. It means that our healthcare system is a little bit less burdened by COVID. This graph over here is actually looking at all of the hospitals in Eastern Washington. And you can see roughly the same thing where these numbers are beginning to come down. What we do see over here, this is the number of people in the ICU on a ventilator. And you can see right now that there are 14 people in the ICU, 13 on ventilators. Now, they are not necessarily all COVID patients, but the point is the ICU is full right now. And actually, as of the other day, the ICU was on diversion. So they had no more room and they were looking around at other hospitals in the state that we could send our sick patients to. So what I want you to take away from this is that the hospital is full, but happily it's full of things that are more than just COVID. Okay. This now is looking in the past month at the ages of people who tested positive. And I really don't see much change over the past month, pretty steady all the way across. Actually, it's a little bit more spread out than it was a few months ago. Still, most of the disease is in this group here between the ages of 20 and 50. There is more than there used to be in the 10 to 20-year-olds. And this is these three bars up here, what I sort of keep an eye on, because those are the elderly who are the most vulnerable to the badness of COVID-19. This graphic is looking at where the positives have been in the last couple weeks. And this is by city. This is in Chelan County. Obviously, this bar stands out quite a bit. This is Dryden. And so what I would say, Dryden is very hot right now. Now, there's a problem when you do statistics like this, because in a very small town, it only takes one or two households, maybe one or two big families who are sick to really drive the numbers very high. And we know Dryden is a smaller community, so I'm sure that's a part of it. You can see Ardenvohr also, which is up the Eniat Valley, is quite hot, but again, a very small community. Kashmir here is relatively hot also. They have been for several weeks now. And then across the board, everyone else is more or less between 600 and 1200, which is very hot related to the rest of the state. This is Douglas County, and I think what you'll see is here, East Wenatchee is very hot, and Rock Island, which of course is contiguous with East Wenatchee, next door neighbors. So, and I don't think this is a problem of small numbers. I think this is true, and that there's quite a few people carrying COVID right now in East Wenatchee and Rock Island. All right, this is looking at the percent of positives by ethnicity. The light blue are our Hispanic neighbors. The dark blue are our non-Hispanic neighbors. And you can see we're still cruising right along 50% Hispanic. Again, only 31% of the population self-describes as Hispanic. So this is still a disproportionate share of COVID in the Hispanic community. And of course, we all know this by now, but our Hispanic neighbors are doing much more of the essential work than non-Hispanic neighbors in our communities. These are our mortalities. This actually has not changed in the last couple of weeks. What you can see, blue is male. So you can see, I don't know if you can tell, but I'll tell you it's true. There are more mortalities who have been men than women in green. You'll see that 2/3 of the people who have passed away from COVID are over the age of 70, but still we have had people pass away who are under the age of 70. And we've even had 3 people who are in their 40s who have died of COVID. So it's hitting all ages of adults. This graph is interesting. I have not shown this to you before. This is actually looking at influenza. So this is different than COVID. This is influenza, the thing that we're used to having at this time of year all the time. And this is state level data, Washington State. And it is the percentage of emergency room visits which are related to influenza. And it's looking at the past 3 years and then this year. This year is in dark green. So light green was last year, dark blue the year before, light blue the year before that. And the weeks across the bottom are how you might count weeks during the year. So week 52 here was actually the end of December, right? The last week of the year. And that's what this data is through. And you can see that it's very common that around the 44th week, 46th week, everybody starts getting sick with influenza. These curves go up. But this year, absolutely flat. So it's like there is no influenza going on this year in the middle of flu season. And I just think that's really interesting. I think it's interesting for a couple of reasons. One is, as a physician, I have always felt that influenza was the biggest and baddest infection we had to cope with. And we found that we can wipe it out. And we can wipe it out just by using our masks and distancing and washing our hands. And I think some people might say, yeah, but what about flu shots? Maybe this year there are more flu shots given, and that's not true. We've given a lot of flu shots this year, but we've given about the same number that we've given in the last 3 years also. So this isn't related to flu shots. This is related to masking and distancing and hygiene. The other thing that's interesting, though, is that even though we've been able to essentially wipe out influenza with masking and distancing and hygiene, we are still in the middle of an incredible outbreak of COVID. So I've said many times, and I'll say again, COVID is almost the perfect virus for infecting humans. It's breaking through things that influenza can't come close to breaking through. And I think a large reason for that is because in influenza, almost everybody is symptomatic. Every time you have influenza or anybody else has influenza, they feel so sick that they stay home in bed, drinking chicken soup. And in COVID, that's not true. At least 40% of people are asymptomatic, and probably a lot of the spread is coming from those people because they feel totally fine and they just walk out of the house and go to work or go hang out with friends, and that's when the transmission happens. So interesting. So far this year, we're seeing no influenza. So those are the ends of the graphics, and we'll go and answer some questions. Okay, we've got some questions for you today. The first one is, please explain the rationale for getting tested if you are not sick. I could test negative today and get it next week. Don't studies show that there is no transmission from asymptomatic people? So you actually bring up a couple of points here that I want to address. I think one of the terrible weaknesses of testing is just as you say, you could get tested today and be negative, and you could contract the virus tomorrow. So testing negative today doesn't predict anything about the future. And in that way, you're right, it kind of doesn't make a lot of sense. And it's the only thing we've got. So because so many people are asymptomatic, we need people to come in and get tested even when they're fine, feeling fine, so that we can identify people who are asymptomatic but contagious, and we can help them to stay at home. and isolate themselves. And our hope has been that if we can test broadly enough, we can start finding all these people who are asymptomatic and keep them at home to wipe out the transmission. So I've made an analogy to whack-a-mole. I don't know if you remember that game that's at the carnival, but it's the game where the mole sticks its head up, through the holes, and you've got to hit it with a hammer. And that's kind of what it feels like sometimes as we're doing this testing. We're just waiting for it to pop up, and then we want to test everybody around it so we can push it back down. It is very inefficient, and it is very expensive. And again, it's all we got. The second point, though, is you say, isn't it true that studies show there's no transmission from asymptomatic people? That is absolutely wrong. And as I mentioned just before, there's a huge amount of transmission from asymptomatic people. And I think that's what makes COVID different than influenza. So identifying asymptomatic people is super important. Now, if you are feeling fine and somebody tells you that you have been a close contact with somebody else who just tested positive, it's super important that you go and get tested, because now we know you're actually at high risk. Even though you're asymptomatic, you're at high risk. And if we can prove that you are positive, then we can encourage you to isolate at home. And if you're negative, then you don't need to. You still need to quarantine. But that's really, we're trying to really focus on testing people who've been exposed. But for sure, asymptomatic people can transmit COVID. And great questions. Second question. I got tested for COVID before Christmas. I didn't get my results until after Christmas. This turnaround in results needs to be faster. What is the health district doing to get our results to us faster? I totally agree. It needs to be faster. And it's difficult. Obviously, if it was easy to get it done faster, we'd have been doing that. So this question actually reminds me a little bit of a sign I saw once in a restaurant. It was it was a sandwich shop I walked into. And the sign on the wall said, when it comes to eating out, you get to pick two of the following three options. You can have good food, or you can have cheap food, or you can have fast food. And so what they're saying is, you can get good food. Good food that is cheap is not going to be fast, and fast food that is good is not going to be cheap. So you only get two, good, cheap, or fast. And it's kind of the same with the testing we're doing right now. You can have a very good test, which is actually free, but it takes a long time to get the results back. Or you can get a test which is not quite as good, but you can get the test results back in 30 minutes. So I suspect what happened to you was you went to one of our public testing events prior to Christmas. And those events are being run by the state of Washington, and they're doing the PCR test. PCR test is the best test we have. It's a molecular test, genetic type of test, but it has to be sent out of the area to a lab outside of our counties where it can be run. And that takes time. It takes time to run it there. And then in the middle of a surge, like around Christmas time, they're super busy. So it takes them a few days to run it. And then we have to run through the long list of people calling them their results. So that takes even longer. So inexpensive, very good, but takes a long time to get the results back. The other test we have is the antigen test. And right now, most of the clinics, Confluence Health, Columbia Valley, Lake Chelan, Cascade, are using the antigen test. The antigen test is not quite as good, but we get the results back in 30 minutes. Also, it's a little bit expensive because in many places you actually have to go in for a clinic visit to have the testing done. So from a public health standpoint, our answer to your frustration is we're using that antigen test. Now, we could talk about this for a long time for statistical reasons. That antigen test is best in someone who has symptoms. It is most accurate in checking someone with symptoms. In an asymptomatic person, maybe like you, the person who asked this question before Christmas, it's not as good. So the PCR test that you had was actually the preferred test, but it's kind of hopeless if you don't get the results back before Christmas, which is why you were getting tested. So I agree with you, and it's a tension between those things, accurate and inexpensive, or not quite as good, but quick. And we have both, and it's complicated. So thank you for that. All right. So by this time of the year, everyone in my house would have gotten the flu shot. I'm not complaining, but are these safety measures for COVID impacting flu season? Are we going to have an easy flu or cold season this year? And that is just what I was talking about in the slide deck. It is amazing. Excuse me. We've seen almost no influenza this year. And so fingers crossed, I think, yes, we're going to see a very light flu season. What we have seen in my clinic is that essentially everybody coming in with fever, cough, cold, achiness, they have COVID. We haven't seen anybody who's coming in with other problems, which is because I think we more or less wiped them out by using masking, distancing, and hygiene. So great question. Thank you. All right, last question here. Where are we at with vaccinating our healthcare workers? I'd like to know when I can expect to get my vaccine. I don't meet any of the high risk criteria, but I would like to start visiting my elderly parents again. I'm right there with you. So again, you raise a couple of points. We're actually doing well right now vaccinating healthcare workers. And so we have divided people up into different phases. And so phase 1A is what we're doing now. And those are first responders and healthcare workers who are most at risk of being in contact with and working with patients who might be COVID positive. So we're pretty much finished vaccinating the hospital staff, and the clinics are vaccinating and have almost finished their staff. So now we're actually beginning to reach out to dentists, offices, and physical therapists and home health providers and other healthcare staff who may be exposed to COVID positive patients. We've been vaccinating first responders, so ambulance crews, paramedics, police officers, fire department, all those folks we're getting vaccinated right now. Now, it turns out, in contrast to some other parts of the state, we have enough vaccine and we feel ready to move on to the next phase. So we've been talking to the state to see if we can get their permission to move on to what's called phase 1B. And in phase 1B are the elderly and medically frail and also essential workers. So we're hoping to get to them within the next 2 weeks. So you raise another interesting point, which is you don't have any risk factors, but you want to go visit your elderly parents. So just to talk a little bit about the elderly, folks in what we call long-term care facilities, so nursing homes and that sort of thing, they're going to be vaccinated, we believe, by Walgreens. So Walgreens Pharmacy and CVS Pharmacy undertook this challenge and are contracting with the government to go into the nursing homes and vaccinate all of those residents. And I'm not aware that that has started yet in our 2 counties. I know it has on the other side of the state. So we anticipate that happening fairly soon. So if your parents are in a nursing home, hopefully they'll get vaccinated soon. And then if they're not, they should receive their vaccine, you know, I'm thinking probably in early February timeline. So again, the thing that's important is not so much that you get vaccinated, but it's that your elderly parents get vaccinated. So we want to make sure that the medically vulnerable get vaccinated first. And so if your parents are elderly, as you describe, they need to get vaccinated. If you could get vaccinated too, then it'd be double safe. And if they're vaccinated, then hopefully at least you could visit them wearing a mask, and we can all feel pretty good about that. So that's the end of our questions for today. Again, I appreciate your time. We very much appreciate it when you send us these questions. And I'll look forward to speaking with you again next week. Thanks.